Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on surviving the pay review process. My name is Tim Kellett, and I'm a director here at Paydata. And we've been supporting customers' pay reviews for 20 years through initially our benchmarking surveys, and then more recently through our online pay review support service, which includes our online software. So today I'm going to talk to you about top tips for surviving the pay review process, but I thought I'd start off initially with some background information about who we are and how we work with our organisations, but more specifically what the pay review looks like for a lot of organisations and the sort of challenges that they're facing. And then if you've got any questions, please fill in the Q&A part of the function on the screen, and I'll try and do my best to answer them at the end of the webinar. So if I move on to who we are, first of all, a bit of background. We are committed to making lives better at work, and our customers tell us that the whole pay review process is a key element of their annual HR agenda. So making our customers' lives better at work during this period is what our software and our service is all about, really. So it's really about reducing the time and resource spent on the annual review process. So that's a really important part of the annual agenda, as I said. So I mentioned we are a reward management specialist, been working for 20 years. I guess most of the work that we do is around helping organisations to find, attract, retain, motivate and engage the right people and the right talent. And within that, the pay review process, I guess, for most organisations is an important time to be able to retain, motivate and engage their existing employees. So getting it right is obviously extremely important. If we look at the pay reviews challenge, what most organisations who speak to us about their pay review, they say the time and resources required is very high. Actually collating data from, sometimes it can be multiple sources, multiple systems takes time. Then when the process, during the process, there's updating the data and correcting the data. Making sure line managers are correctly informed about so that they make the right decisions, the right consistent decisions, perhaps within a budget. And then obviously ensuring that there's the correct sign-off of the whole process and the authorization of the subsequent reward decisions. And then finally, actually meeting key deadlines within the review. So those are the sort of key challenges a lot of organizations talk to us about, and that's what today is really about, how to meet those challenges. Now, not every pay review process is the same, but for a lot of organisations, this is the sort of typical process. So essentially, there's an initial piece of saying, okay, what's the objectives? What do we want to get out of our review this year? What's that timeline look like? I think it's really important in determining this sort of what's the output from that. That might be a budget. What budget are we working through to? So that's an important part of it, and obviously they're making sure that you agree how we're going to communicate the whole review process. Then there's a time there spent in terms of looking at the system. So if you've got a piece of software, it's configuring that. If you're using spreadsheets, it's making sure you configure those in the right way so it's holding the right sort of information. Then there's some time spent around collating the data, as I said, from all those sources and loading up into the various systems. The actual go-live process itself is quite a hectic time, as a lot of people would probably agree with. There's the in-review data management, so that's, there's changes to sort of the data as you go through the review. There's managing that sort of support for whoever's making those review decisions, and that can, if you're using an IT solution, that can be also using a help desk. There's the whole reporting analysis as the review is going on, so that's keeping whether it's senior management informed or key stakeholders about how the review's going, is it working to budget, you know, and so on. So there's the whole reporting side. And then finally, there's the sort of sign off, and you know, usually that's after the sort of the close of the review that you then get sort of board sign off for that. And sometimes things don't go always to plan, and you think you've signed off the review, and then it goes back in, and the goalposts are changed as well. What usually then happens is the data is exported from the spreadsheets, or collated from the spreadsheets, or exported from the software, and then uploaded into your HR or payroll systems there, so that people can be paid. Then there's the communication of that to individual employees. So that might be producing letters or updating systems in that way. We often get asked to produce total reward statements at this time of the year as well. So it's an ideal time to, once you've had the pay review, to actually show the benefits and all the other elements of the reward package as well. So that communication part is key. And then finally, and not everyone has a chance to do this, perhaps they're a little bit pleased that they've got to the end of the review and they just want to move on to other things, but a retrospective review or an evaluation of how the process went, we feel is sort of pretty essential. That will then feed into next year's objectives. And indeed, in our own internally in pay data, we have a review process, and if there's anything that's come up, particularly in terms of updating the software, so we have like a software backlog, and you know, so functionality changes which can be used to improve it for the future year, that comes in as well. So that's a typical review process. Obviously, getting it right is absolutely key. So I thought it'd be useful to, if I give you a bit of to put this quote in there. So this was obviously first attributed to Benjamin Franklin, but you can often apply it to many things, many walks of life, and in particular the salary review, really. So it's, you know, it's obviously important to make sure that you've got the sort of outcomes correct, you know, this overall salary increase, but that you have a structured process. You collect and analyze the data and communicate it to employees in the right way, and you know, obviously you want to make sure that you know, you run the review in the right sort of way, so that if you get it wrong, essentially that you can have a drop in engagement levels, and perhaps an increase in your labour turnover. So that's why it's so important to get things right. And how can we get things right? So here's the sort of crux of what I wanted to talk to you about today, the sort of top tips for surviving a review. So number one is, like I said, in a part of that process is agreeing the review principles at the outset. So, you know, what is it you want to achieve? You know, you obviously want to have a smooth process, but, you know, what's the outcomes there? And it's not just what is your budget, but actually, you know, what you want to do in there. And so, and one of the things you might want to think about is, you know, who do you want to target? So we talk to a lot of organizations around, you know, they want to address their gender pay gap, for example, and this is the time of the year they want to do that. If you introduce a new pay structure, it's obviously an ideal opportunity to ensure that you know, maybe red circle some people who are at the top end of the scale or above the scale, and you might want to give more to the people who are progressing through. So addressing any inconsistencies in what people are doing. I think that last point there about individual roles, this is really where you can look at your labour turnover, look at particular recruitment and retention problems, look at your hopefully pay data benchmarking information, and say, okay, what roles or individuals do we need to actually focus our efforts on? You know, do we need to sort of target particular people when deciding our increases? So that's a really important part to think about. You know, what is it we want to encourage managers to look at when they're making their reward decisions? Number two, formalize your project team. I think this is really important to actually, you know, send out to agree, okay, as a team, you know, what are the individual accountabilities, and, you know, who's in there really. So, you know, having some sort of overall project owner or sponsor is really important in that. So someone where the who needs to make the sort of top level decisions. You've obviously got the delivery team in there, but that can also not only include the administrators, but it can include people like HRBPs or anyone who's offering help and support and advice to the people making the pay decisions. So it's really important to have that support there in place to make people, make managers feel supported and make sure that they're doing the right sorts of things. It's very easy to, when you're thinking about when you're working your project team together, to forget certain parties, and that can include your suppliers as well. So it's very important to make sure that if you're using someone external, that you use that they're a part of the project team, and then there's a joined up communication approach there. I guess some of the other tips that people have talked to us about is maybe not having too many cooks. So having too many fingers in the pie can sometimes slow down decision making and create some inconsistencies there. So it's getting the right balance really. Typically the organizations we work with usually only the ones that work best tend to have about sort of 2, maybe 3 HR people in the delivery team at the very most really. It's also an important time as well to perhaps get your senior management buy-in as well. So you've got your project team together, but it's important to get their buy-in into the whole process as well. And a lot of that is around the communication, and that's the third point really. So communication is key. So it's obviously communicating with the managers, who are doing the pay review decisions. So what's required of them, what's the outcome. So what can managers do and can't do. That's important to be able to communicate that to them. I think it's important as well to address what sort of address the sort of different stakeholders' expectations. A key thing here is around obviously you're going to have some new starters, some people who have less knowledge of the whole process, or this might be their first review. So it's important to address those people there who've perhaps don't know how the review works, don't know how the system works. So it's important to make sure that that you manage their expectations, and so they know what's going through. I think the deadlines part is a really important part as well, a really important area as well. So people can manage their time appropriately, and you've got that communicated so people know when they're expected to be involved in the process, particularly senior managers when they're going to be really busy anyway. I guess the last tip here is around starting early. It's really one of the biggest areas we find that people fall down is where they perhaps leave it a little bit too late, perhaps sometimes don't give managers enough time to make their decisions. So it's important to start that process and start the communication process at the outset really. So I think that's important. And then lastly, as part of the communication, it's really providing guidance on how the process works. If you've got a system there, we produce bespoke user guides for our software. So it's making sure that you've got a process there where people can seek some guidance and some help. If you've got it's common actually for people to do perhaps webinars before the go live, or perhaps even sort of drop-in sessions if needs be. So it's I think that's a key part of it anyway. So that's the third tip. And the fourth tip, I guess it's sort of data. You've got to have good data in to get good data out. It's a bit like that. We say that with benchmarking surveys as well. So it's making sure that you collate all the sort of relevant information, and that it's obviously accurate. And that sort of goes without saying, because if it's not, that's going to undermine the whole process with your colleagues. In terms of the data, it's not just in terms of accuracy of job titles and individual record accuracy, but it's also about who signs off those reward decisions. So there's a sign-off hierarchy of some kind. So that includes who's what individuals are in a manager's particular data sets, and how, and then when they made their decision, who then is next in the process to sign it off to approve the review. So getting that right is really, really important. And it's quite easy to forget. It's easy to focus on the individual employees and not the actual managers who are actually signing off, and who fits in whose pot basically. There is a decision around benchmarking data. So not everyone we work with includes their benchmarking data in the review. Sometimes there's almost like a suggested range for managers. So you know, what's the suggested pay increase for this particular individual, and that might be determined by the benchmarking data or positioning scale, perhaps performance. And sometimes you can be as open or as closed as you want about that. So, you know, some organisations actually have the market data, the quartiles of the market data in, you know, to help inform decisions. Other people don't, and they just, as I said, just have like a recommended rate really. So that's a decision you need to make, and obviously collating that extra information does take time as well. So, and then I guess it's that last point is the parameters really. So how much really do you want managers to make their decisions, and how much choice do you give them? So, you know, are you going to allow them to put anything in? You know, a common thing might say you might give them a range, and if they exceed that range, they've got to put a justification in, or you know, some people say you can't deviate from that range. So there is a bit of and it depends, I guess it depends on the culture and the individual organization really, you know, how useful they're going to find that, and you know, how much control do they want to have basically. So you've got that as well, and then I think this is also an area where Paydata provides a lot of support. So not just in terms of our software, but it's around the whole data management. And I think that's a side that can often be overlooked. The amount of time it can take within the review to manage, you know, the data really. So that's number 4, and here we go. Number 5 is time management. So I think really goes without saying that it's really important to have sufficient time in the whole process for all the different activities. So, you know, when you're working out the project plan in the first place, thinking about, you know, all the different activities that go through, have happened in previous reviews, and that might happen this time. I think it's important in that to be a liaison with other departments. So if you do need to get data or information or some activities from other departments, is making sure that they're available early as well, and you need to put that in the project plan. I think we always say this as well, but building in that contingency, if possible, is really, really important. So we often find that's one of the biggest problems with people, is if they've not allowed enough time for a particular part of the process, then HR is usually the ones who are under the greatest amount of pressure to try and solve things. So building in some sort of contingency, particularly in the go live area is really important. That can also, you might also want to put that in terms of the deadlines as well. So, you know, particularly for if that it's going to impact on senior management availability. And then finally, just sort of sticking to the plan. So I've done this in this 4-box diagram here. You have the IT development and configuration initially up front. Whilst that's going on, you can be doing some data gathering. Once that you put the two together, you have the go live period, and then finally board sign off. And I guess following that, it would normally be sort of communication. So time management, I think that's probably one of the biggest key areas really for surviving the pay review. Next one, and the final one, is system familiarity. So I guess it's you know, it's configuring the system, making sure you know what system, you know, even if it's a spreadsheet, it's knowing what you can and can't do in your system really. And if you're using a piece of software, one of the big tips would be to say, you know, do you need to do, can you work within the confines of the current system's capabilities, or do you need something, anything bespoke to be developed? If that's the case, ensure you've got enough time to build those in, and there's usually some sort of cost attached to that as well. So I think that key element, that point there about, are these bespoke developments essential, you know, that's it's an important point there. Can you live without them if needs be? And I guess that last point there is really ensuring that, you know, how your system is set up is set up so it meets your needs, you know, the requirements you agreed at the outset really. So that's really important. And you know, one other element of the system's configuration and capabilities is, you know, what's been done before, how has that been how's this process differ to before? Because managers, if you're looking at lots of different managers, they like consistency between the years, and if you implement something new, you've got to make sure that they're properly taken on board. I guess that comes back to the communication side of things as well. So as a summary, those are the sort of top tips there for surviving the review. If you've got any questions now, I'd be happy to answer them. We can maybe all those who signed up to the review to the webinar, we can make it available to you if needs be afterwards as a slideshow. And obviously, if you've got any questions after the webinar, I'd be happy to answer them as well. So I'll just see if check if we've got any that have come up. Oh yes, I've got one here. When people have moved from using spreadsheets to software, what's been the reaction? So I guess taking that is what's been the reaction from managers, and I guess a lot of that is around how comfortable are managers with using the software. We tend to find ours has been developed so that it doesn't require any real training, and it works for managers with a whole different levels of computer literacy. So it needn't be a problem. The reaction is, we haven't seen any negative reaction to that. I just go back to the point about making sure it's properly communicated beforehand, and you've got enough webinars and user guides and help there, enough support if needs be. But the reactions generally been very, very positive. I think people tend to find the online systems are sort of very, very useful. So that's the first question. There's another one here. How early would you recommend starting the pay review process? That's actually a very interesting one. I mean, I would probably say 3 months perhaps before you go live is probably allows enough contingency if possible. So I'd say 3 months before go live, and that would probably mean about 4 months before the review starts. So that's, you can see why some people run into a little bit of difficulties, but because 4 months seems like a long time, but it can go so quickly. And we do get people who contact us and want some support, and they're 3 or less than 3 months before their review, and that can be a bit of a problem for them. So yes, I'd recommend, as I said, about sort of 3 months before the go live. And I've got another question here. We currently use spreadsheets to complete our pay review, which seems to take a huge amount of time. I'd like to look at introducing software, but I'm struggling to get senior buy-in. Any tips? Actually, I mean, that's something. Actually, I've got your details, so I can send something to you. We do have some helpful documents to help get buy-in, because as you can imagine, if you do it if you use software, or if you use a method which can save a lot of time and costs, and that'll create some cost savings as well. So we've answered that question lots of times in the past, basically about helping to build a business case. So I can certainly help with that if you've got any. So I'll send. I've got your email address. I'll send some more details, or perhaps we could have a quick chat afterwards. Any more questions? I don't see any more coming up. Okay, right. So with that, I'll thank you very much for your time. As I said, if you would like, do you have any questions that come to you afterwards, please do get in touch. If you want to know anything more, as I said, please get in touch. And otherwise, thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you have a good day. Thanks, Elaine. Bye-bye.